Now, Australia would not still be bleeding this much, and Victoria would not be having this second deadly wave of infections now spread to other states, had the Victorian government done one thing properly, probably the most crucial thing properly, had it not failed to stop the virus from getting out of its quarantine hotels. Why didn't it get professionals to run the security there? Who in the Victorian government chose instead badly trained, badly equipped private security guards, some hired on WhatsApp, guards so clueless that they got the virus themselves and then spread it outside? Now, there are even journalists who are buying the spin from Premier Daniel Andrews, trotted out again today. This is not the time to be pointing fingers, demanding answers and names. This is the time to save lives, because really, in the end, it was all in the past anyway.
I just don't have the time, and I don't think those who are watching this today and every day would want me to be spending time on those sorts of political issues. They apparently relate to matters that are 3 or 4 months old.
So I guess I better say, before I do point the finger right at the Premier, let me say this. This same Andrews government, this is not the time to point fingers. This same Andrews government had no problem last month threatening Victorian employers with 20 years jail and fines of $16.5 million if their staff contracted coronavirus at work and died. But when it comes to taking accountability for its own deadly mistakes, for making so many other workplaces so unsafe, this government and its ministers are running like hell. Not my fault, can't say, don't know, this is not the time, someone else may be. The key question: who decided that one of the most critical jobs, maybe the most critical job in stopping this virus, keeping those quarantine hotels safe and secure, should not be done by rank amateurs? It should be done by professionals like the Army or the police or prison guards, not private security companies. Now, the thing is that the Morrison government says it offered Victoria 100 soldiers as far back in March to come and do that kind of work. Premier Andrews, however, to a parliamentary committee, denied it.
I don't believe ADF support was on offer, and ADF support has been provided in very limited circumstances in New South Wales, not to provide security as such, but to provide transportation from the airport to hotels. So again, I think it is fundamentally incorrect to assert that there was hundreds of ADF staff on offer and somehow someone said no.
But the Federal Health Minister today claimed that was false.
On the 27th of March, National Cabinet met. The resolutions of that Cabinet were released and announced by the Prime Minister, and there's a formal announcement which indicates that the states would operate hotel quarantine and that the ADF would be made available. There's also a Premier's press release of the same date indicating that Victoria would be adopting hotel quarantine with ADF support. Both of those are public documents.
And as Greg Hunt said there, you go to Premier Andrews' own press release of March 27, that's 5 months ago, you find him announcing these new quarantine hotels and himself saying it has been agreed with the Morrison government, it has been agreed that the Australian Defence Force will be engaged to support the implementation of these arrangements. The Defence Forces would be used to support the implementation of these quarantine hotels. That's what Daniel Andrews himself said. Soldiers had been offered, had been accepted, yet somehow they were never then actually used to do the most important thing at those hotels. Not transport, not running food up to the rooms, not, I don't know what else he might have thought they'd be used for. keeping those hotels secure. And still, we are not told by Premier Daniel Andrews, why not? Why weren't they used? He won't even tell us who made that call. Not me, says the Premier. Well, is he telling the truth? And if it was not the Premier of Victoria, but just the poor schmuck of a boss in the private sector who had a worker dying in from the coronavirus that escaped from these quarantine hotels, would Daniel Andrews now face jail under his own laws? What a mess. What a mess. How did it get that bad in Victoria, you know? Well, someone who's got part of the answer, it's about the culture, the ideology of this government, is Bella de Brera, who is head of the Foundations of Western Civilization program at the Institute of Public Affairs. I spoke to her a short while ago. Bella de Brera, great piece today in the Australian newspaper. Now, your argument is that the Victorian government and its bureaucracy seemed ideologically ill-prepared to deal with this crisis. For instance, let's start with the fact that the Department of Justice and Community Safety, which is should be central to keeping the virus in those quarantine hotels contained, is at this very moment advertising for a Director of Inclusion and Intersectionality. What do you do as a Director for Intersectionality for $250,000 per year plus super?
Well, I think first of all you've got to go to Google and look up what intersectionality is, because a lot of people don't know. It's it's the identity politics triangle. So I assume that you spend your time trying to make sure that the triangle fits your vision of how society should be. So that's going to be all white, straight white male at the bottom, and everyone else sort of going towards the apex of the triangle. Look, I don't know what this job entails, but it's certainly unbelievable that it is being advertised at the moment, given what's going on.
Now, more to the pointy end, the Department of Jobs is the department that actually set up the quarantine hotels from which this virus escaped. And they're saying, well, we didn't do security, but there's a big argument about who was actually supposed to be in charge of it. The departments are quarrelling about that. Whoever did it hired not the army, not the police, not prison warders, but private security firms, including one called United Security, which wasn't one of the preferred tenderers for security in the first place, but it is Indigenous owned. Now, why would it have hired a security company, for such a critical role, and one that wasn't even one of its preferred tenderers for security?
Well, it hired it because it feels that it basically puts ideology over practical matters. So for the Victorian departments, they believe that identity politics is more important than anything else. So, I made the point in the article that would you want the pilot of your A380 or the surgeon operating on your family member to be chosen because of because of diversity and inclusion, or because of merit? So this is the problem, and this is, I think, the fundamental problem with how the Victorian governments are working, and why we're in the mess that we are, because they put ideology above everything else. And it's just, this is why we're in the mess that we are. And this is why they can't run a quarantine, and it's exactly why the elderly and the vulnerable aren't being looked after as they should be.
Now, in fairness, I should say one government minister said, no, we didn't hire it for our social inclusion policies. We had security on our mind. Well, I'm not sure about that. And I should also say the United Security ran only one of the two hotels from which the virus mostly escaped. Another security company did the others. Now, the Department of Health, which is, one would have thought, supposedly trying to keep us safe from this virus in Victoria, has been enforcing They Day for all staff. So the first Wednesday of the month, every month, the first Wednesday, it's 10,000 employees, we're not busy saving people from the virus and other illnesses, must go around using gender-neutral pronouns such as they and them rather than he and she. What on earth are they doing?
Well, this was something that they introduced a couple of years ago. I don't know if it's still running, but it applied to all 10,000 employees at the time, where they allocated a day where you would actually have to be forced to use the pronouns they, as you mentioned, they instead of he and she. Obviously, this is just social engineering on a massive scale, and this is what we're seeing now. What has been going on in those departments is now coming to fruition in and affecting our everyday lives. And I think that's why there's such an uproar about this at the moment, is because we're now being personally affected by the ideology that is this sort of pseudo-Marxist and all this identity politics stuff that has been incubating in the universities for such a long time, and now is the ideology that is the preferred ideology of the bureaucrats running these departments. So it's very interesting to see how it's playing out in society now, and it's playing out with disastrous results. It's
so weird. Oh, well, I hope they're saying, like, they died of coronavirus, not he died of coronavirus. I hope they get those pronouns correct. And meanwhile, of course, the same department we've now found out, didn't have the resources of other states in contact tracing, et cetera, which has been really bad in Victoria.
Yes, yeah, they've been spending millions on diversity and inclusion and all these terrible ideologies that are jeopardising the lives and livelihoods of Victorians and Australians.
I don't get it.